denizens of the night. Welcome to another episode of the macabre, the terrifying. Broadcasting live from the corner booth with a view of the room, I will be your guide through the witching hours. Tonight, we'll be haunted by mysterious creatures which infect the mind. We'll meet Ken, a perfectly normal man whose world is turned upside down one day when he sees something he shouldn't. From that point on, strange creatures begin to appear to him, more frequently and violently as time goes on. They're always nearby, vigilant with their many merciless golden eyes. This story is called Eyes to See and was written by A.G. Hilton. As I set foot in the little bar on 6th, I ask myself once more what I'm doing here. This asshole cuts contact with me while I'm out of town for a bit, stands me up and drops off the face of the earth. Yet I still come running when he calls out of nowhere, and from an unrecognized number at that. As I scan the scene, I catch sight of him in the shadows of a corner booth. I barely recognize the gaunt face there, and my angry thoughts drop away. Ken? He jumps at the sound of his name, even though my approach was no secret. Apparently, he was so focused on the news story, some grisly murder piece playing on the TV above the bar, that he didn't notice. When he turns that hollow-eyed gaze on me, I find myself suppressing a shiver. "You came," he says. Jesus, you look like shit. I slide in across from him and take a moment to gather my thoughts. This man is not the same one that I knew. He sinks in upon himself like someone long starved. His eyes, once keen with an intelligence that had drawn me to him in the first place, are bloodshot and empty. What the hell happened to you? He looks at me a moment, saying nothing, his eyes periodically darting over my shoulder to the TV. The anger that was burning within me before I entered the bar comes back in force. Talk to me. You go dark for nearly a month with no explanation. Now you reach out saying you need to talk and you're just gonna stare at me? I almost leave, almost walk out in righteous indignation, but he stops me with a spindly hand. I'm sorry. I didn't expect you to actually come. I don't even know how to begin. How about you start with what you've been up to for the past month, why you've been avoiding me? It's complicated. So complicated you can't be bothered for an explanation? Are you in some kind of trouble? He looks at me and chews his lip. The bell above the bar's door rings, and I catch his gaze flit that way. God, he looks like a trapped animal watching for an approaching predator. After a moment, he rubs his eyes and moans lightly. Trouble. Yes, I'm in trouble. You've got to talk to me. I can't help you if you won't tell me anything. You can't help me. Maybe I could if you would just talk. He runs a thin-fingered hand through his hair. Once I'd found that movement attractive, but now it seems palsied and pitifully weak. It makes me want to cry. You're right. I just need to get on with it while there's time. What do you mean while there's time? Is someone after you? Yes, they're after me. The bell above the door chimes again. Again, he looks like a startled animal. I just wanted to tell you. Wanted to apologize because you're the only person who matters to me. You should know the truth, even if you don't believe it. Maybe knowing will help keep you safe. What truth, Ken? I don't understand what you're talking about. Who's after you? I don't know. It's them. They'll get me tonight. I know they will. I tried to go out earlier. Needed to get some food. They're usually watching, but this time they weren't. When I came back, the apartment door was open. If someone's trying to hurt you, we need to go to the police. No. His response is so vehement that several patrons turn our way. I try to disarm them with a forced friendly smile while Ken continues. They can't help, and I can't go to them. Not anymore. I lock his eyes with my own, holding his gaze. Ken, slow down and tell me what happened. Start at the beginning. I promise I will hear you out. I want to help you. Okay. I want to tell you. You're not going to believe me. I guess it doesn't matter. I just need to tell it if you'll listen. I'm here. I'm listening. Ken takes a deep breath before leaning across the table on his elbows. I just wish I knew how it began, he said. I wish I knew why they started following me. I wish I knew why I started to see them. I don't know, part of me feels like if I could get some idea about the start of it, then maybe I could figure a way out. But it's not like that. It just began one day, a perfectly normal day about a month back, right after you left for your trip. No omens, no signs, nothing that Hollywood would have you believe. It came out of the blue like a car wreck or cancer diagnosis. I was in the atrium of the Bank of America building that morning, like usual. They got that nice atrium area, remember? I always used to get there early so I could do some writing or read some before heading a block down to the office. It's a nice place, bright even on rainy days with the skylight, and there's always people coming and going. But I got a weird feeling that morning. I'm not even sure how to describe it. It was like something shifted, something fundamental. It's like my perception shifted, like it... How can I describe it? The sensation was so alien. But I was just sitting there in my usual spot. All the people around me were going on their usual tracks. But something had gone wrong with me. Like I was cut loose from the world around. Like even though I could see and hear all these people walking and talking, I wasn't really there with them. That's when I saw my first. Rain was pouring that morning, and when it came in through the doors on the bottom level, it was wearing a hat and a long coat like businessmen wear to keep their suits dry. But this wasn't a businessman. If it weren't for that weird feeling of disconnect that hit me at the same time, I might not have noticed at all. Certainly no one else did. But while everyone else milled about, I couldn't help but see the shifting underneath the coat, the drip of something more viscous than water. Then it looked up, looked right at me with golden eyes, and I knew that it knew I could see it. But I blinked, and it was gone. Had that been all, I would have forgotten the whole thing. Just a freak trick of the light. And as the day went on, I convinced myself that it had been just that. I had almost forgotten about the incident completely by the time I was walking to my car that evening. It was getting dark when I left the office. Always is this time of year. I don't think much of it usually. There are always other people out, and no one pays me much mind. In fact, I usually wear headphones and am oblivious to the outside world. But that evening, I wasn't. Maybe deep down I was half remembering what I thought I'd seen in the atrium that morning, and it had me spooked. Whatever the case, I didn't have my headphones in, and that may have been what saved me. because as I came walking towards 7th, I heard a noise coming from the alley next to that little hipster barcade on the corner. Normally, I wouldn't have looked, but something in the noise caught my attention. It was the wetness, I guess. Sounded like something slimy rubbing against a brick. Made me think of a slug or something that might live on the bottom of the ocean. And right after I heard the noise, I smelled something ripe and decayed. Between the smell and the sound, I couldn't help but look up. I wish I hadn't. If I'd kept up my normal pace and downward gaze, maybe I wouldn't be here talking about it. And again, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe their hooks were already in me. Fact is, what I saw slouching down the alley was not human. I don't know what I saw exactly, but I can't shake the memory of that sea bottom smell and the way it hissed when I looked at it. I remember the yellow of its 100 eyes. I ran then. Didn't stop at crossings. Didn't even look to see what was coming. I ran until I got to the car, and then I just drove. Not home, just drove. Until I managed to convince myself that no matter what it had smelled like, sounded like, or looked like, it couldn't be what I thought. Because the only word that kept flashing in my head was monster. And what are we told all the way back from when we're little? Monsters are not real. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. I kept listening to the noises of the night and hearing that wet squelching. It was like I was a little kid again, waiting for the thing under the bed or in the closet to slip out once I closed my eyes. Little did I know the few hours of decent rest I finally got that night would be some of my last. Some naive part of me thought that it would go away. Hell, I was still in complete denial about what I'd seen. But another part seemed to already know the truth. I guess that's why when I really started seeing them in earnest, I wasn't really surprised. They were everywhere. The grocery store, the plazas downtown, gazing from half-draped windows with their golden eyes. I tried to ignore them at first. Since the alley, I hadn't been that near one again, and no one else seemed to pay them any mind. Maybe if I showed I wasn't afraid, dismissed them as the paranoid delusions I told myself they were, that they would eventually fade. Work had been stressful. The move to the new apartment had been stressful. And I felt like I didn't have anyone to go to since you were gone. I was just lonely and things were getting to me. It was a fine explanation, a logical explanation. I just needed to keep my mouth shut and my head down. But things got worse. I seemed to get closer after that. Still watching, always watching, but closer and closer. Then one night, as I was in the now normal throes of sleepless anxiety with rain pouring against the roof, I noticed something at the window. You know, there's that street light right outside my apartment's window. It shines in a little no matter how you arrange the drapes. But now it wasn't. The window was totally black, as if the world had dropped away outside. And when I listened, I could hear something squeaking on the glass, a sound like windshield wipers rubbing on too dry a surface. I don't know what made me throw open the drapes, but when I did, I saw something crouched at the window. Just a silhouette against the pale glow of the street lamp. It came at me, breaking the glass, and grabbing at me with a wet and clammy grip. I flung myself back, and whether by sheer effort or luck, I got free and ran. I called the police and didn't go back in until they showed up. The window was broken, glass littered on the inside frame, and the floor beneath, a thick coating of viscous slime. I touched it, felt the ooze of it between my fingers. But when I asked the officers about it, they looked at me like I was speaking another language. I even had one pick up a piece of the glass covered in it. And though I saw the stuff running down his wrist and arm, he didn't react at all. They ended up taking a statement, likely concluding it was just a case of vandalism or attempted burglary, and then went about their night. Ken. I grab his hand, and he twitches at the interruption. Ken, have you spoken to anyone about this? Anyone who can help you, I mean? Someone professional? He blinks at me and then shakes his head. There's no one to tell. No one can help. No one can if you don't tell them. Why did you wait all this time to tell me? I've been back in town for weeks trying to get in touch with you. Because I knew you'd look at me like you are now, like I'm crazy. You go into a professional, say the things I say, tell them you see the things I see, and they'll want to lock you up. But I'd be helpless then. Don't you see that? I thought you said you would listen. Ken? I pause, trying to choose my words carefully as he looks on with pleading eyes. I don't doubt that you see the things you do. I really don't. But these things, they're not real. They can't be. They're real enough. Ken draws back his left sleeve and reveals a smattering of bruises, small and circular around his forearm. At first, I think they're track marks, but then I'm reminded of a science article I read a while back on sperm whales. It talked about how many of them are found with strangely similar markings, caused by battles with giant squid. What are those? I ask, and my chest feels tight. You tell me. I got them that night when the thing grabbed me at the window. The broken glass, do these look like cuts to you? The fire of conviction in his eyes stops me cold. His gaze holds nothing but cold clarity. I look down at his forearm again and feel dizziness coming on. I have to keep my head on straight. Ken rolls down his sleeve and takes a breath. It's real. Whatever it is. It may not be real for everyone, but it's real for me. You need to see help. He shakes his head, a teacher looking at a hopeless pupil. I don't have much time left. They're getting closer still, and I want to tell you everything. Please, just listen to me. I grab his hand once more and find that tears are standing in my eyes. 1,000 thoughts fly through my head. I need to get Ken some help, but I'm afraid with how he's been acting that pushing any more will make him bolt. In the end, I simply say, Okay, go ahead. He takes in a breath and then continues. Things spiraled after that night. I stopped sleeping almost altogether. I became a prisoner in my own apartment. They would be out at all hours, skulking around. I knew that they wanted to get me because they stopped trying to hide it. It was around this time that you got back into town, and I wanted to call you so badly. But when I picked up the phone, the line was filled with that wet squelching noise, and I panicked. I smashed it and flushed the parts. It was stupid, I know, but I was so scared. I couldn't think straight. After that, I stopped going to work and began fortifying the apartment, covering the windows so they couldn't look in at me with those golden eyes at night. But the food started to run out. Finally, this morning, I knew I had to try to get more supplies. Surprisingly, I made it out of the apartment with relative ease, and only a few of them were out and about. It seemed too good to be true, and I soon realized it was. When I came back to the apartment, the door was open. Something thick and wet coated the handle, and I knew I couldn't go back inside. Whatever happened after is a blur. By dusk, I found myself under a bridge over by the Greenway, exhausted and confused. I was so damn tired and had actually started to drift off when I felt something touch my shoulder. I jumped up to find one of them crouched beside me. The rage that filled me was incredible. It was the rage of the frightened and desperate. Before I knew what was happening, the rock was in my hand and I was swinging. I didn't stop, even when the warm fluid splashed back against my face. At last, I fell back exhausted and trembling, but triumphant. I'd done it. I'd killed one of the fuckers. They weren't as invincible as I thought. I crawled closer to the thing, wanting to finally get a good look at one of my tormentors. But it was all wrong. I threw back the folds of the light jacket, not to reveal some slimy thing, but an old woman. She was older, but fit, probably out for a morning walk on the Greenway. I can't forget that shocked look in her eye that was still intact. But God, her face, when I saw the way her face had caved in and the blood flecked with gray bits of what was probably brain, I vomited. Jesus. My eyes flicked from Ken, who now sat, eyes downcast, across from me, to the TV screen where the gruesome news story was playing again. That was you? He shot a quick glance around the bar. Everyone seemed to be paying us no mind. Yes. A pained expression filled his face. No! I just did what I had to do. See? I can't go to anyone now. Ken, you killed someone. No, it's a trick. I killed one of them. But the body... I put my head in my hands. You saw the body. Christ, you just told me that you saw it for what it was. The police found the body. Ken, you said it yourself. There are no monsters. There are. That got heads turning. His voice dripped with a venom it had never once carried, and I drew back. At that, his face softened and he looked like he would cry. I'm sorry. I just want someone to understand before it's all over. I want someone to know that I tried. Because there are monsters. If not out there, then in here. Ken tapped his temple. What? Out of everything, I think I have one thing right. I'm sick, see? Sick with them. They're in my mind. And I don't mean I'm imagining them. I mean in there. I don't know how they got in there, how the knowledge of them infected me, but it's there. Like a disease eating my brain. Ken rolled up his sleeve again to display the strange marks. But they're not hallucinations. They're real. They can hurt me. They can affect things around me. I don't know how they do it. I don't know why I'm the only one. I'd turn myself in for what I did to that woman, what they made me do. I don't care about being arrested. I deserve it if I really did kill someone. But if I get locked up, I won't be able to run anymore. They'll get me. I reach out to him, pleading. Ken, listen to me. We need to get you help. I don't care whether or not you turn yourself in, but you need to get help. Please. He takes my chin in his hand like he used to, tenderly, and speaks softly. I told you, there's no help for me anymore. But I know what I have to do. I just want you to know that I love you, and I'm sorry. He kisses my hand and stands, but I hold him and beg him to stay. The other patrons in the bar are now openly staring at the scene. I have to go. Some of them have been skulking around and there's no time. Please don't try to follow me. I don't want you getting hurt. Ken, please sit back down. Talk to me. Just tell me what you're doing. Whatever the case, I see one thing clearly now. When the enemy is in your mind, there's only one way to escape. He bolts then and is gone through the front doors. I run to follow, but he is lost to the night. I miss him so much. I feel sick when I think of how angry I'd been that night, and I wish I'd taken the time to just drink in those last moments. The police did find him eventually, swinging from the rafters of an old building on the edge of town. They said he had forced entry. No foul play was suspected. I still don't know what to make of his story. It seems hard to think of Ken being capable of killing, even in a deranged state. But the police found some evidence on his person which connected Ken to the brutal slaying of that woman. Or at least that's what they say. It must be nice for them to feel the loose ends are tied up. Me, though, I still wonder. I keep thinking about what he said about being sick with them, about his mind being infected with the hell that only he could see. I keep thinking about those marks on his arm and the resigned rationality in his eyes as he spoke. And whenever I'm alone but feel watched, when the neighborhood dogs howl at the empty night, when the cats watch empty spaces, I wonder if it's catching. Earlier, when introducing this story, I stopped myself from posing the question of whether or not Ken could figure out a way to escape the gaze of his tormentors. He cannot. Posing the question seems to assume the answer, and I didn't want to disappoint. How could anyone escape a world that's continually closing in around you? Or a pursuer who is invisible to everyone but you? You know, the human perception of the world feels accurate and infallible, but the truth is, it's anything but. There are plenty of frequencies beyond our hearing, and wavelengths beyond our sight. How strange is it, really, to imagine there could be something with you even now? Perhaps it's benevolent, perhaps it isn't. Beyond your sight, it is invisible to you, but it watches and waits for the right moment. If you enjoyed this story, please check out more of Mr. Hilton's work. I'll put up a playlist for you at the end of this video. As we near Halloween season, you might want something chilling to read. Mr. Hilton has released a book of short stories as well, which I will link on screen now, and you can also find in the description. Please also leave a like on this video and subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Whatever you do, act like you don't notice. And don't fall asleep.